Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're really going to explore haiku, that incredibly short but really powerful Japanese poetic form. We've pulled together quite a bit, mainly drawing from a detailed Wikipedia article to, well, get under the skin of this miniature literary world.
Yeah, there's a lot there.
Our mission really is to understand its core parts, trace how it developed over time, and see how it's traveled and changed around the world. We want to give you a solid yet, concise grasp of it all.
Definitely. And maybe the best way in is with Bashu's famous Old Pond haiku.
Oh, yeah, the frog one.
Exactly. Old pond frog leaps in water's sound. Simple, evocative. In Japanese, it's furu aikya kawazu tobikomu bizu no oto.
Right?
And that original has 17 on 575. The translation gives you the scene, but the Japanese, it has its own rhythm, its own kind of pause built in.
That pause, so we'll get to that.
We will.
Yeah.
But this little poem, it holds so much of what we're going to talk about today.
Okay, so let's tackle this on thing right away, because it's not quite syllables like we think of them in English, is it?
Not exactly, no. That traditional 575 structure, it refers to on. Think of them more like sound units or morai. It's about duration, really.
Can you give an example?
Sure. So the word haibun, we say it in two syllables, right? Haibun.
Yeah.
But in Japanese, it counts as 4 on. Haibun en. Each of those sounds gets a count, even the word on itself.
Let me guess. 2 on.
You got it. O-N-N. It seems subtle, but it really affects the rhythm and the perceived length.
Okay, see, so it's a different way of measuring sound.
It is. And it's interesting how that plays out in translation. The Haiku Society of America actually noted that about 12 English syllables often feel similar in length to 17 Japanese on.
Huh. So maybe that's why English haikus sometimes feel, well, shorter, or poets aim for fewer syllables.
Could be part of it, yeah. An awareness of that durational difference. And it's worth remembering, even the masters weren't completely rigid. Bash himself sometimes deviated. Yeah, his famous one about the wind of Fuji.
Yeah.
That one's actually got a 6-7-5 on pattern.
Interesting. So flexibility even within the tradition. Now, you mentioned a pause earlier. That brings us to kiraji, the cutting word. Sounds quite dramatic.
It does, doesn't it? But it's a crucial element. The kiraji usually comes at the end of one of the 3 phrases. It acts a bit like a sorta, a break or a pause in Western poetry.
Okay, so it creates a rhythmic division.
That, but also more. It can juxtapose 2 different images or ideas, sort of, making you think about how they connect. Or it can give a sense of finality to a phrase. It's about creating a space, a moment for reflection between parts of the poem.
Right, so it's doing structural and conceptual work. The article said English doesn't really have a direct equivalent.
No, not a single word that does the same thing. So in English haiku, you often see punctuation like a dash or maybe line breaks doing that work. Or sometimes the cut is just implied by the grammar or the flow.
Can you show us how it works in Japanese? Like in the frog poem?
Sure. In Old Pond, furu ik ya, that ya, after Egg Pond, is the kireji. It creates a distinct pause,
Right.
separating the stillness of the pond from the sudden action kwazu to bikomu, the frog jumping in.
Okay, I hear it now. That little ya does a lot.
It does. And you see it in his Mount Fuji poem, too. But interestingly, some haiku, even by Bashu's and one by Issa mentioned in the article, don't have an explicit kireji.
So how do they create that separation?
Often through structure. You might get a short first phrase, maybe 5 on, set against a longer phrase of 12, uncovering the second and third parts. The contrast in length creates a similar kind of 2-part feeling.
Clever. Different ways to achieve that balance. Okay, element number 3, kigo, the seasonal word. This seems more straightforward.
On the surface, yes. It anchors the poem in a specific time of year, but it's richer than just saying summer or winter.
How so?
Well, the kigo usually comes from a saijiki. Think of it like a huge dictionary or almanac of seasonal words and phrases specifically for poets. And these words aren't just labels. They carry layers of cultural meaning, specific images, feelings, even historical associations tied to that season in Japan. It's what some call logopeia. The word itself is dense with associations.
So frog might not just mean frog, it implies spring.
Exactly. Or cherry blossoms, obviously spring. Snow means winter, cicadas mean summer, and so on. These words instantly evoke a whole sensory and cultural landscape.
But like kireji, not always required.
Correct. Especially in haiku written outside Japan, or in some modern Japanese free-form haiku, you might not find a traditional kigo. The rules have become more flexible over time and across cultures.
Right. So we've got the building blocks, the on count, the kireji cut, the kigo season word. Now, where did this form actually come from? It started as part of something longer, right?
Yes, exactly. Haiku originated as a hoku, which was the opening three-line stanza of a longer form of collaborative linked verse called renga, and later renku.
Collaborative, so people wrote it together.
They did. The hoku was the all-important first verse. It set the scene, usually included the season with a kigo, and established the tone for the rest of the poem that followed, written by different poets in turn.
Fascinating. So how did it become a standalone poem?
Well, over time, especially around the 17th century with Basho, the hoku started to be appreciated on its own merits. Anthologies began, including just the hoku. Bosch himself used them powerfully within his haibun.
Haibun, that's the prose and poetry mix.
That's right. Like in his famous travel diary, Oku no Hosomichi, or Narrow Road to the Interior, he'd write these beautiful prose passages and then punctuate them with a hoku that captured a specific moment or feeling. So the hoku was already gaining independence.
And then someone gave it the name haiku.
Yes, much later, in the late 19th century. That was the poet and critic Masaoka Shiki. He formally proposed the term haiku for these independent poems, partly to distinguish them from their role in renku. But now we tend to use haiku retrospectively to refer to any hoku intended as a standalone poem, even Basho's.
Okay, and Basho, you keep mentioning him. The article calls him a saint of poetry. That's quite the title. What made him so important?
He really transformed the whole tradition. Before him, the linked verse haikai could often be quite light, witty, almost like a game. Bosch elevated it, particularly the hoku, into a serious art form, infusing it with deep feeling, spiritual depth, and this aesthetic concept of sabi.
Sabi.
It's a complex idea, but it relates to a kind of lonely beauty, an appreciation for imperfection and transience, finding beauty in simplicity and austerity. His poems weren't just observations. They felt like profound glimpses into the nature of existence.
Wow.
His influence was just immense. He gathered many disciples, his school promoted the standalone hoku, and yeah, about a century after his death, he was effectively deified. He set the standard.
Incredible. So after Basho, the form continued to evolve. Who came next?
Buson. Joseph Buson, yes, in the 18th century. He's associated with what's called the Tenmai style. What's really distinctive about Buson is his connection to painting.
Oh, right. He was a painter, too.
A very accomplished one. He's famous for haiga, combining painting and haiku together on a scroll or page. And that visual sense comes through in his poetry. His haiku are often very painterly, focusing on light, color, scene, almost like little verbal sketches. Very sensory.
Visual poetry. And then after Busan, we get Issa. His story sounds quite different, more personal.
Very much so. Kobayashi Issa. His life was marked by a lot of hardship, poverty, family loss, and his haiku reflect that, but also his deep Buddhist faith. There's a real humanism and empathy in his work, often focusing on small creatures, insects, children.
Like the one about the rain?
Yeah, or the one asking the cuckoo how much rain it drank. It's tender, direct, sometimes heartbreaking, sometimes humorous. He brought a different kind of accessibility and emotional directness to the form. It feels less lofty, perhaps, than Basho, more grounded in everyday struggles and affections.
It sounds like he made the form feel very relatable.
I think so, yes. He showed how it could be a vehicle for very personal human feeling.
Okay, so Bosch elevates it, Busan brings the painter's eye, Issa adds humanism. And then we get to Masao Ashiki again, the one who named it haiku. He sounds like a real modernizer.
He absolutely was, end of the 19th century. Shiki felt that haiku, or haikai as it was often still called, had become a bit stale, kind of stuck in cliches, what he called tsukinami.
Tsukinami, like commonplace.
Yeah, conventional, predictable. He wanted to revitalize it. And he was influenced by Western culture, particularly realistic painting like plein air painting.
Painting again. Interesting link.
It is. It led him to champion chasse, which means sketching from life. He urged poets to observe the world directly, objectively, and capture those fresh impressions in their haiku.
So less reliance on traditional poetic topics, more on direct observation.
Exactly. He also made a point of formally separating haiku from renku, the linked verse, and downplayed the traditional Buddhist connections that were so strong in Basho. He really pushed for haiku as a modern, independent literary form. And as we said, he popularized the name haiku itself.
A real reformer. Okay, so that covers the key figures in Japan. How did this very Japanese form start to travel west? You mentioned Hendrik Doof very early on.
Right. The Dutchman in Nagasaki around, the early 1800s? His lightning haiku is maybe the earliest Western attempt we know of.
But it didn't catch on immediately.
No, not really. For a long time, Western scholars, when they encountered hoku, often dismissed them. Maybe they seemed too simple or the aesthetic principles weren't understood. It took a while.
Until after World War II, it seems, with R.H. Blythe.
Blythe was absolutely pivotal for the English-speaking world. His big 4-volume work, just called Haiku, starting in 1949, and his later history of haiku. These were incredibly influential.
What did he do? Just translate them?
He did translate, but he also explained the history, the aesthetics, the Zen Buddhist connections, although Shiki might have debated that emphasis later on. Blythe basically provided the context and the tools for Westerners to understand and appreciate haiku. He really opened the door.
So he was the main conduit for English speakers, but it was happening elsewhere too. Italy, you mentioned.
Yes, even earlier, actually. In the 1920s, there was Harukichi Shimoi, a Japanese writer and translator living in Italy.
Okay.
He was friends with major Italian literary figures like Gabriele D'Annunzio and introduced them to haiku. D'Annunzio even experimented with it. Shimoi also introduced Ezra Pound to the form.
Pound, the Imagist poet.
The very same. Though, Pound's famous Metro poem, while clearly inspired by haiku's conciseness and imagery, is maybe more imagist than strictly haiku in spirit, but Shimoi was the connection. He even published a haiku by the feminist poet Yusano Akiko in one of his own novellas.
That's quite a network. Then in the 50s, we get two more key figures in English, Kenneth Yasuda and Harold Henderson. They had different ideas about translation.
They did. Yasuda published the Japanese haiku in 57. He was quite specific. He argued for disking to 5-7-5 syllables in English, not on.
Ignoring the on difference.
Pretty much, for the sake of a familiar English rhythm. He even suggested using end rhyme sometimes to use English's sonic qualities. And he introduced this influential idea of the haiku moment, that flash of insight or experience that sparks the poem.
Okay. And Henderson?
Harold Henderson's warm. An introduction to haiku came out a year later, 58. He was more aware of the on-syllable difference in length. While he often used a 5-7-5 structure, he focused more on keeping the order of the images the same as in the Japanese, and he often translated them into rhymed 3-line stanzas, like ABA.
So Yasuda focusing on syllable count and maybe rhyme, Henderson on image order, different priorities in bringing it into English.
Exactly. It shows there wasn't one single way it was being interpreted or adapted. It was already diversifying.
And it just kept spreading from there, didn't it?
It really did.
Yeah.
France had Pauline Couchot introducing it. Rabindranath Tagore encountered it and brought it into Bengali. Chinahai Desai in Gujarat.
South Asia, Poland with Chesiomios, even politicians. Herman Van Rompuy.
Haiku Herman, yes, the former European Council president. It just shows how widely it resonated.
And in English, beyond the translators, we see poets really taking it up, the imagists, like Pound.
Yes, Pound's Metro poem is the classic example of that early influence. And there were early Japanese-American advocates like Yo Noguchi and Sadakichi Hartman promoting it.
But the article highlights Richard Wright, too.
Hugely important. The great African-American novelist. Later in his life, he became fascinated with haiku, studied Blythe and the Japanese masters intensely, and wrote thousands of them.
Thousands.
Apparently so.
Yeah.
His collection, Haiku, This Other World, wasn't published until after his death, but is considered a major work of American haiku.
Wow. And the story repeats in other languages. Italy built on Shimoi's introduction.
Yes. Italy saw more experimentation. Futurists liked its brevity. Eventually, haiku associations were formed. Poets like Mario Cini, Andrea Zanzotto.
It took root.
In Spain and Latin America. Similar story. Major Spanish poets like Machado, Lorca, Jimenez experimented with it. It popped up in Catalan avant-garde circles. Then Jose Juan Tablada really popularized it in Mexico. And from there, it influenced others across Latin America. Octavio Paz, Jorge Luis Borges. Big names.
Borges wrote haiku.
He did. It seems its conciseness appealed to many different sensibilities.
And even Southeastern Europe.
Yeah. Introduced in Yugoslavia by Milu Krnjanski, then it developed quite strongly, especially in Croatia and Serbia, with dedicated poets like Dubravko Ivanchin and Vladimir Divide, journals, clubs, festivals. A real haiku scene emerged there, too.
It's incredible this tiny form just traveled everywhere.
Right.
The article also mentions some related forms quickly. Haibun, haiga, kuhi.
Right. Haibun, as we said, is that mix of prose and haiku, like Bosch's travel writings.
Okay.
Haiga is the combination of haiku and visual art, like Busson's paintings with his poems.
Got it.
And kuhi are poem monuments, haiku cards on the stones or markers, often in places significant to the poem or poet. A very lasting tribute.
Tangible poetry. Finally, just to round out the picture, besides the big four, Bashu, Busson, Issa, Shiki, any other key historical writers we should know?
Well, from the earlier period, People like Arikita Mortake, Nasawa Bonshu, and the important female poet Chione are often mentioned.
Okay.
And from Shiki's time and later, influential figures include Taka Hamakyushi, who was more traditional, and Ogiwara Saizensui, who advocated for free-form haiku. Even the novelist Natsume Soseki wrote haiku. So, yeah, a really rich history.
It really is. So let's try and wrap this up. We've journeyed through haiku's core, that unique on count, the crucial pause of the kyoji, the evocative seasonal kigo. We followed its path from being the hoku, the start of a longer poem, to becoming its own powerful form, shaped by these incredible masters like Basho, Busan, Issa, and then defined for the modern era by Shiki.
Right, and then we saw it travel the globe, adapting, changing, inspiring poets in, well, so many different languages and cultures: English, Italian, Spanish, Bengali, the list goes on.
It's quite a story.
It is. And maybe that leaves us with a final thought for you listening. How did this happen? How did such a short, specific form, born in medieval Japan, manage to resonate so deeply and universally?
Yeah, what is it about haiku?
Maybe it's about the power of paying attention. The power of capturing just one small, fleeting moment with clarity. It kind of invites you to look at your own world a bit differently, doesn't it? To find those little haiku moments in your everyday life, if you just pause and, well, really see, what might you notice today?